We are on the air, at least as far as things go. It's 2 minutes left, but welcome to the inaugural, God, I can't even say it, Community Circle Cloud Conversation Club. There we go. Got it out. That was difficult. Now I just got to remember who's on my list that I'm going to approve for talking and who's not.
I think I'm not on the list.
No, you are on the list. You're just not one of the featured. That's what we decided was to feature 5 people. The people I invited I invited, but
Okay.
we're also featuring 5 of you this week, 5 of you next week, 5 of you the week after, and there may be repeats.
Hey, Dustin.
Hey, Angela. How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Doing good. I almost thought I wasn't going to make it. Our roofers decided to show up like 5 minutes ago. We had bad storms like 4 or 5 weeks ago, and we've had problems getting anybody out to fix the roof. So, but they're gone now.
Cool. Well, I've got it all set up finally. I figured out how to mute participants on entry, so and no one can unmute themselves. So we can bring in anybody they want, but they can't start screaming vitriol or whatever. And we should be off and running. Cool. Oh, that's right. I'm trying to think, why have I got you guys on this side and not this side? But it's because I'm using OBS Studio to stream this onto YouTube at the same time.
Oh, okay, cool.
Isn't that a wonderful product?
Pardon?
Isn't that a wonderful product?
Yeah, we're not here to talk about OBS Studio, but yes, it is.
Yeah.
I would pay money for it. I'm kind of surprised that they're not charging money for it.
I know.
Carlos, oh, okay, there it goes. I was trying to
Hey, can you hear me
but
okay?
It wasn't working.
Yeah. All right. I think I'm all set. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, everybody. Sorry. Kind of late.
No worries, no worries. This is the first one, and this is low key anyway. We'll see how it goes. I'm not even sure if we're going to get anybody. It doesn't look like anybody except the people I invited showing up at this point. I'm unmuting you as fast as I can, Callan. There it goes.
I can't just unmute myself.
Nope.
You're mean.
I am. I am. That's me, man. Great big meanie.
Well, let's finish up so I can go test drive another car.
That sounds like fun. What kind of cars are you test driving?
Mini Coopers.
Ooh.
I need more pictures.
I'll send some more, I promise, darling.
Okay.
Well, let's give it a second, see if anyone else is going to show up today. And otherwise, we'll get going. This is an experiment. If it doesn't work out, we'll stop. But we have a number of viewers already on YouTube, just so you guys know. Because we're running this on YouTube at the same time as we're doing it on Zoom. So it's going both directions. Something, I don't know.
Okay.
Cloud stuff, whatever. Technology things.
So you're saying we have to behave?
I didn't say that. All right, let me unmute Tim, too. Welcome, welcome. Come on in.
Hello,
Join
hello.
the party.
Hello.
How is everybody?
Good,
Hi,
how are
hi,
you?
How are you?
Friday.
Yes.
It is. It's Friday.
Friday.
Well, I have to
isn't it?
work until like 6 tonight, so I have a sales call.
Well, somebody's got to make the money to pay the bills.
It's true. And Mindy, excellent. Cool. Well, you guys are all welcome. You want to get going? We've got a few viewers on the one stream, even if we don't have a whole lot here. We can start going. Oh, and Rob, cool. I'll unmute you too, Rob. Right, so the topic for today is really simple. Platform as a service, why it's the single most important thing you could possibly ever do in terms of going to the cloud. All the rest of the cloud can burn in a fire, but platform as a service is important. What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is true because it's one of the big differences cloud makes, that you can do platform as a service and not have to have your own infrastructure to look after. So it's perfect. So to be honest, I think no one would like to really care for if you do development, no one would really like to care for setting up SQL Server and installing it and looking after it. So if you do it on infrastructure as a service, you have more like some kind of Tamagotchi thing going on, where you always have to look for it and always care for it and everything. But this is something which is completely gone if you do platform as a service.
Yeah, I don't
So
disagree. Go ahead.
I was going to say, coming from someone who runs a product in Microsoft that doesn't have a PaaS service, I would love it. The discussion came up twice today. So as Scott Guthrie signed the PaaS service for Oracle and Azure, and I'm like, no, it's constant. Customers don't want to be supporting this anymore. They don't want to be managing it. I'm trying to build out PaaS kind of solutions inside infrastructure as a service, and it's a headache. It's a challenge. So yeah, they want it.
By the way, let's pause 1 second because I should have done this right at the front, and I am so sorry. Could you please introduce yourselves real quick? I'll call out names and you guys introduce yourself. Bob, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Bob Pusateri. I'm a DBA based in Chicago, working primarily in cloud architecture folks type stuff these days.
Frank.
I'm Frank Geisler, and I'm from Germany. And I run my own consulting company. And what we do is we are consulting on the one hand Azure, on the other hand data topic.
Excellent. Kellen.
My name is Kellen Gorman. I am an Oracle SME engineer at Microsoft. I am multi-platform, but of course I started working on Oracle 4 months into my Microsoft career, and it's just gone downhill from there.
Dustin.
Yeah, Dustin Dorsey. I'm director of analytics for a large healthcare company here in the States.
And Tim.
Tim Radney, principal consultant with SQL Skills. I've been working with Azure for 4+ years now. I've done a lot with like in-person training, user groups, migrations. Just kind of been doing SQL for the past 15 years full time. Kind of dig it.
Cool. See, Mindy, are you unmuted? You are.
Yeah, I just don't have enough USB ports to plug in this webcam. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
So I'm not at my office. I'm at home. I live in Dallas, Texas. I have my own consulting company. I mostly work with the trucking and transportation industry. A lot of them are moving to the cloud. A lot of them are sort of straddling on-prem in the cloud. And I'm on the PaaS board.
Crazy person.
Yes,
Rob,
I am.
Mr. Sewell. Oh,
Muted.
I think you're muted, Rob.
There we go. Nope, still no sound.
still no sound. All right, work on it. Carlos.
Hey, my name is Carlos Robles. I am originally from Guatemala, living in the United States for the past 3 years. I started my career as an Oracle DBA, but then I switched to SQL Server, doing SQL Server since then. Colleen agrees, that's great. So I am a Microsoft Data Platform MVP. I obviously working with Microsoft technologies, but I work more as a solution architect nowadays, working on anything, Linux, Windows, any kind of platform, any database. So that's pretty much what I do.
Cool. And Angela.
Hi, Angela Tidwell. I am from Texas, and I work for Jack Henry and Associates as a solutions architect.
Awesome. So these people, I invited everyone, and they showed up. 5 people were featured on the website. 5 people will be featured on our next event. And the basic idea is we're going to have a conversation. And the topic today is platform as a service. We've already heard from a few people on how important it is. I would like to hear a little bit more about how important it is. Rob, are you on yet?
Well, yeah, there's this red button on my thing that says mute, and it flashes a red light when it's muted. But hey, technology's hard, especially hardware.
Cool. Well, this is Rob Sewell, everyone. He's a great guy, smart person, and he's here to talk about platform as a service today. So what do you think about platform as a service?
The beauty of platform as a service, as I put in a slide at a client today, is the ability to scale resources quickly and easily, and also to only pay for things when you're using them.
Yeah, and that's huge. That's gigantic, in fact. Cool. Let me ask another question. Why would you avoid platform as a service? Let's say you're going to the cloud anyway. You know, you're definitely committed. I'm going to buy Azure. I'm going to buy AWS. We're definitely, we've decided we don't want to have the infrastructure locally, which, all things I can agree with. Why would you not use platform as a service? Why would you instead go to infrastructure as a service or maybe software as a service or something else? Why would you avoid platform as a service?
So maybe when you're moving to the cloud and when you're moving to platform as a service, maybe there are some things which are not provided, which your application needs, which are not provided by the platform as a service. For example, if you have a database and if you use XP command shell or something like this, this is not provided by platform as a service because you're running in a shared environment, so you're not allowed to access the underlying infrastructure or the underlying operating system or something like this.
Tim, you had your hand up.
And you muted, buddy.
Yeah, you're muted. Should be good now.
Yeah, right. It was telling me I couldn't unmute myself, Grant. Like you may not speak.
Yeah, I'm mean that way.
So yeah, Justin or whoever's speaking, absolutely. There are feature limitations. XP command shell, certain other things, especially with your Azure SQL database. Managed instance has opened a lot of that up, but still, in some of the PaaS, your log write. I mean, there's bottlenecks with storage and throughput that you just can't exceed. You can't get past. That's not every workload, but if I have a massively high write, tens of thousands of small writes, it just eats up, the PaaS resources, and I can't put a customer there. So we have to look either at infrastructure as a service or possibly, big iron, on premise. But it's the argument that Grant and others have been making for a decade now. It's not a one-all solution for every single workload. There are, I'd say 60-70%. You could probably go there and be just fine. But it's just like at the big conferences, you always have that person that raises their hand when like hyperscale was announced. Up to 100 terabytes. Well, I have a 400 terabyte database. Shut up, go away. It's not for you. We're trying to get small things. Don't go with the biggest, most mission critical day one. But the biggest struggle that I've seen with client migrations has been around performance, where they're wanting to put big online casino or gaming or high transaction because they're tired of dealing with it and they want to push that to someone else. And it's like, the thing is, it can still work. Leveraging in-memory OLTP, leveraging column store, leveraging other technologies to help mitigate some of that. But just the lift and shift, it's going to require a little bit of swizzling, a little bit of black magic, and it can work really well. But that has been my struggle, is the high systems.
Did I beat Rob on that one or raising my hand? I was going to say, from somebody who does all infrastructure as a service, this is one of the biggest deals. I have customers that are migrating from Exadatas. I have customers with IOPS that are, 103,000. I do nothing but have that situation where they come to me and go, well, AWS says I can go with RDS, their PaaS solution. It's like, no, you can't. Thanks for playing. No.
Right.
And now we're going to Azure, and I actually build out those workloads and tell them, we're going to implement Azure NetApp files, and we're going to create these capacity pools. And, they're like, so what am I doing with my managed disks? And we're striping disks, and we're doing stuff the old fashioned way. We still are, and we have no choice. There may be a couple small databases that could benefit from a PaaS solution, but it was that same challenge. And even when I was doing multi-platform and working on the SQL Server side, I was getting those databases nobody else wanted. I was getting the ones that were infrastructure. And they were the ones that had, undocumented parameters. They had flags that had to be in there that couldn't be on a PaaS solution. Those are just the expectations that people need to understand. And they are the ones that they look at first. They're tired of those. Those are the headaches. Those are the ones nobody else wants. So they go, I'm going to move those to the cloud. Yeah, but you're going to have to give up on PaaS then. You just are. So it should be expected.
Right. Well, I mean, is there anything like when you go to implement PaaS, Carlos? I mean, have you put together a PaaS solution? What was something that was challenging that you didn't expect to be challenged on? I mean, because you can kind of look at what the idea of a PaaS is for data. Like whether it's Google or AWS or Azure, the limitations are kind of clear, mostly, depending. But what surprised you?
Well, it wasn't a surprise for me, but more for my clients. It was a cross database queries. That was a big thing for them. Yeah. And they were complaining and saying, why I cannot query another database? Well, this is not the way it is. It's by design. It's because it's isolated. Is a tenant. It's a different design. It's for different kind of applications. So it's not a good fit for you. But they were forcing it because they wanted it. Because the cloud is the best thing. They heard that will solve all the problems they have, but it's not. And the other challenge was the security. There was some applications that has really tight audit processes, and they thought they can get around those processes by leveraging the cloud, because they heard that Microsoft has some kind of military security and stuff like that, and they said, well, this is what we need. But then later they figure out that wasn't. And I was a little bit surprised about some of the limitations in that aspect, because everybody's afraid of the cloud for that reason, because my data is going to be in somebody else's data center. It's not my data center. It's not my data anymore. That's what I think. That's kind of a challenge for some companies to to realize, I don't know how I can say it, to deal with it. So yeah, those are the two main challenges or surprises I had at the very beginning.
Fair enough.
Well,
and Angela,
question for Carlos on that. But you've also found with the security questions too, most of their questions are based off of how they've figured it out on-prem. So they don't know how to base the questions for the cloud. And so they don't get the answers that they want. So they just come to a standstill and they don't move forward.
They didn't move forward. There was some stuff. I really don't have the details about that wording behind the audit and all the requirements, but they didn't move forward because they think at the very beginning they thought it was more secure or it has the standards they need. But at the end of the day, it wasn't, because they have really tight stuff, and they decide to stay on-prem.
Excellent.
I can't really raise my hand, so I'm raising it.
You guys can just jump in. You don't have to be asked. But yeah, Mindy, go ahead.
Well, as far as in the trucking industry, the only trucking companies and this would be, there's different types of trucking, but we've seen through COVID, like trucking keeps this country running. It is, there's more to it than most people realize until they really start looking at what's going on. But the newer trucking companies that are startups that are they don't have a lot of ingrained hardware, they don't have a lot of ingrained integrations. Some of them, because there are some PaaS offerings, are able to use some new software that has come out in the recent years. That software is very standardized and doesn't allow for a lot of customization kind of by nature. It's not as extensible as, say, something like a NetSuite or a Salesforce. It's pretty simplified, and it really is designed mostly around like trucking companies that do brokerage specifically, and they don't have their own assets. Because once a trucking company has its own assets, it gets really, really complicated. So I feel that most of the customers I work with, if they can get to IaaS, it's a huge accomplishment. I haven't had any of my customers be able to get to PaaS at all. It's just, they have integrations. They have to be able to do that cross database. Most of them are using GP Dynamics. Mm-hmm. So that just stops things dead in its tracks right there, because we have to have a linked server connection and we're done.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Huh. Angela, what were you surprised by when you had to move into PaaS, if anything?
Well, we have in banking and investment software, there are certain regulations that we have to make sure are covered.
One or two.
In security, just a couple. And it's tricky because the laws aren't really caught up yet with the technology. And so it's tricky. It's a tricky place to be, because we have, clients who want us fully on-prem, and we have laws that suggest that, but it's difficult when you're dealing with the government and institutions like that. So it's difficult at this point. So,
Dustin,
I don't.
Were you surprised by anything?
Yeah, so I want to kind of go back to one of the questions that you guys mentioned before, and then I'll swing back around on this. So, Angela, you've probably been this kind of being in the financial industry, banking industry, but one of the things being in healthcare and I've spent most of my career within healthcare, is a lot of times our solutions are a little behind the curve. We're using software 20, 25 years old in a lot of cases, and there's just no way to get off of it. So we've had to implement IaaS in a lot of cases because we're running, unfortunately, old versions of SQL that we can't get over. And several of these companies, they don't even exist anymore, but we have hospitals that depend on these applications. Mm-hmm. So unfortunately, we're still running a couple of SQL 2000 instances, I know, boo, and some 2008 R2. But one of the benefits behind moving some of the stuff to IaaS that we ran across, and I don't know if this is across the board, maybe some of the Microsoft folks can help kind of with this, but by moving some of our 2008 R2 to the cloud, we were able to get extended support on those through 2022, I believe, at no additional cost by moving it within there. So it was a huge benefit for us of trying to get those over and then build a plan down the road to try to replace those applications, but still continue to have support. If you left that stuff in an on-prem environment, you could pay for it, but it was like 3 times the SA cost to be able to get that extended support, which was outrageously expensive considering the number of servers that we had on that. One other thing too, and I know I'm kind of just catching up here on some of the questions from before, that I see a lot of people will do IaaS migrations, and I'm not necessarily an advocate for this, but some of the large scale migrations, if you're doing a data center migration, it's generally seems to be a little bit easier to be able to lift and shift those to IaaS within the cloud, as opposed to going through and figuring out how to get those to work with PaaS solutions.
You guys are okay. I was muted myself. You guys are scaring me off PaaS at this point. It's starting to. I love PaaS. I am a PaaS fan, but you guys are like starting to scare me off now. It's really getting me nervous.
Oh, I'm just telling you about.
Can I make you more scared?
No, don't make me more scared. Go ahead.
But isn't that the question? If we're doing PaaS or we're doing IaaS, has a lot to do with the databases that people that are experts may be brought into. The average DBA may have a lot of just small databases that fit a PaaS option, where you're talking to people that may be brought into those whales in the pond, and we're not going to be able to use those as much. You called the wrong people, Grant.
The story of my life.
No,
I'm sorry.
it was Grant's. Grant, your first question was, when is it not a good fit? And so that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Maybe when I add something more here is, I don't know how it is in the United States, but in Germany, if you have companies who are producing software, third-party companies, then often they are not really aware of the cloud. They are not really aware of PaaS services and so on. So for one client, we put a solution from a third-party vendor into infrastructure as a cloud. As a service, and they were really, really astonished that this was working. Where I said, well, it's a virtual machine, more or less. And I think the problem is if you deal with such software, and if you're using platform as a service, as a database layer, then maybe you are running some unsupported environment regarding the third-party vendor, because they didn't test it and they didn't know about it, and they say, well, and as soon as you're as you have a problem, then they will say and point at you and say, well, it's your fault. And it was, even when we built the solution, it was a solution for a mid-size construction company. They said, and there were 40 people working on the solution, and they said, well, we need 3 database servers. And I said, what for do you need 3 database servers? Because it's of performance. And I said, well, how much IOPS do you need? And they said, well, what are IOPS? And so yeah, it's a true story. And then we said, well, okay, if it's this way, we will do it exactly how they say. So if there is something going wrong, then we can say, well, we build it exactly the way you told us. And otherwise, I think they would just blame us. So maybe this is another point.
Okay. Fair enough. Anyone else on that one?
I have a quick one. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go.
Really? Okay, great. So I have a quick comment about IaaS. I know we're talking about PaaS, but I'm noticing a change on IaaS is becoming, I would say, more easy, or is becoming a hybrid. Nowadays, you can configure your backups from the portal, and there's many things you can do. I think Microsoft just offered a new thing that you convert your traditional VMs to a SQL VM, and inherit some maintenance stuff, backup stuff. So it's becoming kind of a hybrid, more managed type than a VM running in the cloud.
And from somebody, again, who's, I know, guys, I'm doing Oracle and IaaS here on Azure. I will tell you, being able to create my own image library, I have customers that need Oracle Linux with this version of Oracle. And instead of building that out every time, that I can create an image and then create it into the image library. And so they have an image just like the marketplace that they can pull from and do that repeatably. That is awesome. So IaaS is getting easier and easier, even for people like myself who do bizarre stuff.
So I'm going to come back to process. I mean, we've had something about how the governments and the health industry, financial industry aren't keeping up with process. I'm working with a client now who, international insurance firm, who have no capability within their change management process or their approval process to deal with the cloud. They want a fixed cost for 5 years, and we're trying to say, but we're giving you flexible, scalable. So if this month you use X, it'll cost you Y. Next month, when we put a load more data into the system, it's going to cost you more because there's more data in there, but you're always in control. And it's blowing people's minds. they cannot comprehend how this thing works. And I think that's one really tricky part of it. The other tricky part of it is because it's hard to ensure the security of the authentication and the RBAC for the cloud in total. It's really easy to say, hey, Grant, you can have permission to create stuff here. Problem is, if you misconfigure something or you don't turn something off, suddenly your manager gets a bill for 15 grand, and then you've got difficult questions to answer. And I saw this happen, and I'd been warning these people that allowing anybody to be able to create resources in the subscription comes with a cost. So you need to have the controls. You need to think about these things before almost you put people into the cloud. So it's brilliant, but there are pitfalls there that people don't see.
Yeah, I'll add to that. That was going to be my thing in terms of one of the biggest surprises is people believing the myth that it's always going to be cheaper to move to the cloud, and it's not always. And as you said, Rob, I mean, it's such an important thing to make sure you're evaluating these costs. Take advantage of the Azure calculator. It's a little bit glitchy at times, but it's a very, very useful tool in terms of tracking your cost, and track it through the project as you go through this, and take advantage of the Azure cost management stuff within the portal. That stuff has came miles within the last year in terms of getting visibility into where you're spending your cost, and use budgets with action groups to perform actions on that stuff to be able to track that throughout the process.
Tags.
Yes.
Use tags on your resources.
Absolutely.
And also architect for the cloud. A lot of times people want to you kind of duplicate their on-prem environment in the cloud, and that's not the right way of doing it. Knowing that a lot of HA capabilities are already built into the infrastructure in Azure, and make sure that you're not duplicating on top of it. It makes no sense. People are like, well, I need to stripe. We were talking about this today of needing to stripe disks on top of stripe disks. And, oh, well, I need 2 copies of this file because I'm putting it on one disk. It's like there's 3 copies of it really underneath the covers. Start having those discussions with folks so that they're not saying, well, it has to be 1 for 1. It's already 1 for 1. You have to rethink this.
What do you say to your clients when they say, well, you say there's 3 copies. I want to have access to the second copy and the third copy.
Yep. You're on the cloud now. Let's architect it for the cloud and understand that it's going to be different and that there is a learning curve here. I'm trying to give them the tools. And remember, I am now doing Oracle on Azure. So there's even that bigger challenge of saying, I'm not taking your badge away from you. I'm not taking your terminal away from you. I'm going to get you your tools. We're going to build Enterprise Manager out there. I'm not going to leave you hanging. So I have those extra conversations of going through. But giving them that comfort level is extremely crucial. Telling them that their world is not going to go upside down just because we're moving to the cloud, and getting their hands on it. As I've been building out, I do DevOps in Azure too, and that's one of the big challenges for me. As we're automating everything, as we talk about the simplicity, ARM templates are lovely. I am so glad that Azure has them. But if I see one more JSON file, I'm going to kill somebody. That is my feeling.
Better
Can
than
relate with you in that.
Yeah,
Well,
the power of AZ commands.
AZ commands, I use that all the time. Yeah.
That over the PowerShell ones. I'm going to say this straight out. I can use an AZ command with PowerShell and then take those AZ commands and put them in Bash, put them in Ruby, put them in Python, everywhere. I have said my piece. I'm done. Okay.
I would never do that, That was a joke.
Can't mute me. I have Twitter. So.
Plus, not going to get myself in more trouble. Bob, you were trying to say something, I thought, earlier?
I was going to say one of the things I think is a barrier for some, at least, for going to PaaS is simply fear. I've had clients that, have demanded to go into infrastructure as a service just because they're familiar with VMs and they don't want to touch anything beyond that, even though they had clear use cases where PaaS would have worked for them. There were no limitations, but I like virtual machines. I understand virtual machines, so I can handle the fact that this is a virtual machine running in the cloud.
Yeah, exactly.
It's comfort. It's them feeling comfortable and using the tools they already know. so that they can work partially in autopilot and learn little by little. Baby steps, I think, is the best way of bringing them into the cloud.
Yeah.
Sure.
But they're not sure. They feel like they can undo it, right? If they're not sure, they can visualize a backtrack, even whether they would maybe never do that or not. They're like, well, I could take all these and I could bring them back. You know, I haven't given away all of my ability to sort of recover my independence if I wanted to take it back.
Exactly. Yep.
And maybe
the knowledge that people have is already in use. They don't need to learn new things because it's.
Yeah.
I mean, IaaS is in a thing, and I think that's something that some teams find.
It's the same reason I don't throw out all my CDs.
Because they work.
Well, I mean, one of the
Do you have
challenges.
floppies too? I just want to know.
but my
Okay.
CDs, my music is my music. I own that music, right? It's the same thing. It's like an emotional thing. My kids
Yeah.
laugh at me. They're all in the garage in boxes, and I'm like, they throw my body over them every time they suggest they should go in the garbage.
There's vinyl in this house, so just saying.
We're actually buying new vinyl.
Oh,
The
God.
kids, it's like we'll go buy an old, there's a place downtown that is a bookstore, kind of a vintage bookstore with tons of vinyl. And it's like my kids, I mean, they're listening to Journey and just old school stuff. I mean, they're all highly musically inclined with the cello and the violin and guitar and piano. And so, I mean, I freaking love it. But one of the challenges I've seen, with Azure is in some cases, Microsoft has made it too easy. I mean, I can go in and spin something up and create a virtual network and subnets and network security groups and open up firewalls, not having a clue as to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I could go and configure Azure Active Directory and sync from on-premises using Azure AD Connect and do some really horrific stuff that I have no business doing because I'm not an identity management person. I could configure multi-factor. And I think that's one of the big challenges when you have organizations that don't have an Azure architect that is orchestrating who has access to what and then defining roles and responsibilities. And it's because now it's all in one collective hive. I mean, the Azure portal, I can do it all. And at the same time, there's tools like the advanced threat protection that everybody should have access to, but only a handful to implement, but everybody to be able to view and see. And when I teach this stuff, one of the things I make or comments I make is who is responsible for security in an organization? Everybody.
Right,
Everybody.
Yeah, everyone.
It's just like when I'm rifle shotgun instructor with the Boy Scouts and leading those merit badges. Everybody is a range safety officer.
Sure.
Who can call ceasefire? A cricket. I mean, I don't care. If you see little Johnny going across to grab his target during live fire, ceasefire. We're all responsible. So we should all see that advanced threat protection and all of those things. But the ability to go and create an Azure SQL database and create all the prerequisites, take in the defaults. I mean, I love it that it's simplistic, but then that crap gets promoted to production.
Can we talk about the job security we're discussing right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because
anyone who's
that's what
nervous
I
about
see
the
with
cloud-
PaaS. Yeah, this is what I don't mind.
Right.
To me, it means that there are more databases. It means that there is more work that we can do, that these databases will most likely run 2 years with no problem whatsoever. And then they need people like ourselves to come in and to optimize and maybe build them out into infrastructure as a service, bring in new features. I've seen that over and over again. My spouse was sitting in a Cosmos DB session yesterday, and he started laughing, and he says, we were talking about old school and vinyl, and it was the exact same discussion. Cosmos DB is having a performance problem. You need to denormalize. And he went, oh my God, we're back to the same thing that we've been doing in RDBMS forever and ever and ever and ever again. Everything old is new again. We always return to the same challenges again. So our DBA jobs are not going anywhere. Anybody who says PaaS is taking away our jobs, no, they're not going anywhere. They'll be back soon enough. Just wait a while.
Well,
Well, I mean,
you
I
just stole
tell
my
people
final
that-
question, but
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm sorry, Grant. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
I mean, that's
I'm
one of the
mouthy that
things, when I do my, Azure SQL database for the production DBA, or, Azure SQL, a tour through Azure SQL, is I ask, if I have people in a room or people that I can see, how many of you are afraid that if you move to Azure or platform as a service, that your job is going to go away?
Yeah.
And there's always hands that go up. And then I ask, so how many of you are, your sole job is, all you do all day is install SQL Server, manage backups, and only tune by creating indexes or deleting indexes? Anybody that's your sole job? Okay, then none of you need to be concerned.
Yeah.
And people freak out with the automatic tuning.
Oh yeah.
Sorry,
It's
how
wonderful.
many problems have only been solved from creating a covering index?
Yeah.
All of them.
Exactly.
I hear you.
Like, so you never have to touch code, you never have to refactor, you never. Awesome. Are you hiring? Because I'd like a vacation.
Easiest job ever.
Right. So you put people's mind at ease, and they're like, oh, so all right, we'll go take a look at this.
I think maybe one of the things that platform as a service is doing is it's taking away the boring work, so you can really go for the interesting things.
But it helps free you up. What too?
Yeah,
Like the
yeah.
auto tuning.
Yeah.
Right. So that is potentially helping to stop a few fires.
Yep.
Right. Workload change just a little bit, and then okay, it can pick
Or
that
create
up. And
new
it can,
ones.
right. New index or force plan. I mean, it's a good thing. And so now you can sit there and kind of review and see when there's been a force plan in place, and go find out why, and maybe you look to do the back end proactive stuff that this caught for you. Users say, hey, things are bad. Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
What just happened? So yeah, it's a great thing. It's freeing us up to do better work instead of firefighting.
And
Yeah.
and maybe
Go
it also helps people who are not so proficient in setting up SQL Server to set up a SQL Server which is okay, or which is good, or which is even better than they can do themselves by doing next finish, but just having properly set up SQL Server by using platform as a service.
I'm
One
the
of the-
ADHD kid, so anytime somebody says I'm doing something that's very tedious, very boring, I do it twice. I'm scripting it all out. I don't want to do this kind of work. I need something that's interesting. So I'm all about PaaS if I can do it. Any way I can automate anything. So you're not going to hear the complaint from me. And like I said, I think it's job security. The more databases that are created, the more that we have opportunities to actually do the real work.
Yeah. And the other thing is, I think that we are dealing with much more SQL servers than we had in former times. In former times, you had maybe one SQL server or two or something like this, and now we have more like 100, 200, or 300.
One of the things I love about that, what you guys are talking about as well with PaaS, is one of my favorite things to do. So I come from a DBA background, is performance tuning. I love it. And historically, I've been on fairly small teams to where it was more reactive performance tuning as opposed to proactive.
Oops.
And with the cloud, proactive performance tuning becomes really huge because it can have immediate results in terms of cost savings, right? So it becomes a little more important for me to spend time doing tuning, because if I can drop something from an 8-core to a 4-core in the cloud, I can immediately realize those cost savings. Were on Prim, you're generally scaling that stuff out over several years, or looking at it, you're putting a little bit higher. So performance tuning becomes a little more important.
I think this is maybe something which changes to between on-prem to the cloud as well. If you're looking on-prem, you usually oversize systems because you think, well, I buy this this very expensive server. It should last 5 years or something like this. So let's buy a bigger machine, because otherwise we get in trouble when we just have to migrate to another machine or something like this. And in the cloud, you can easily scale up and scale down. So I think this is maybe one error much people are doing, that they do the same thinking in the cloud, which is not necessary, because if it is too small, then you can just scale it up. And when I'm brought in as a consultant to Azure environments, often I see virtual machines who are running with maybe 4% processor, where I say, well, we should immediately just scale it down because this thing is doing nothing.
Yeah, and licensing doesn't go away with the cloud as well. So that's a great point as well. If you're running at 80, 90% capacity in the cloud, you're allocating a lot less licensing as opposed to maybe a one running at 30% on Prim. So you're going to save money from a licensing perspective.
I believe PaaS is a great solution because it keeps me focused on what really matters. And it's making my application fast, reliable, and focused on quick tuning. It is not going away. As Tim said, people is afraid that automatic tuning is taking away hard jobs, but it's not. There is always a need for DBA to tune some queries and maybe looking for some ways to reduce the CPU utilization, for example. And I think that was one of the challenges at the beginning. The DTU thing, throw people away. What is a DTU? How many DTUs do I need? And that was kind of a challenge at the very beginning for me, at least. I'm glad this new V Core is a little bit better, I would say. A little bit. Still getting there.
I mean, the thing is like as soon as you went to virtualization, I mean, I know that everybody was really, really concerned about like, well, oh my God, DTUs, that's not the same as measuring. I need to measure my I/O, and my CPU. That's all that matters. And then it's like, okay, cool, but you know you're on a VM, and that CPU number you're getting is a lie, and the I/O number you're getting is a lie, and so basically all you're doing is that you're measuring in X, and fewer X is good and more X is bad. And why is the DTU so confusing? And they go, oh yeah, okay, maybe you're right. But you know, it was always a fight. I do agree. And so just now saying CPU, now everybody goes, oh okay, now I know exactly what's going on. It's like, no, you don't. It's still X. But sorry, I'm not supposed to be talking. You guys are, but I got excited about that one.
That's great.
So 15 minutes left. I have a question. I actually want to hit everybody on this one. Okay, so I'm gonna go around the screen. If you are trying to get started in this, on the one hand, it is easy. I just this week I did Google SQL database for the very first time, and it was nothing to get it set up. I mean, there's a bit of there's details, right? There's details, but basically it was easy. AWS RDS, basically easy. Azure, stupid simple, right? It's just not hard. But one, people are scared, as you guys all said. Two, there are limitations, as you all said. And three, there are the gotchas. There's all those little things. So, starting with Bob, where do people go to learn?
For me, I start with blogs and official documentation is probably the first place I would go if I was brand new and I did not know what to do, and I say I want to try to spin up PaaS in Azure today. I'm gonna go look for Microsoft documentation on the material, because I'm sure they have walkthroughs and whatnot that would get me what I needed.
Okay.
I'll take the easy one. There you go.
Microsoft for Azure, AWS for AWS, and Google for Google. Cool. Angela, what do you think? Where should people go to learn? And it's not just Azure. Don't focus too much on Azure, guys. I mean, there are other vendors out there.
I'm gonna hate to say it, but just a quick Google search, see what you can find. I'm a visual person, so I love the blogs that tell you what to do and then put visualization up, a picture up of what it should look like. And also anything like YouTube. Oh my gosh, I've learned so much on YouTube. I'm new into the data industry. I'm fairly new, just a few years in. I have learned an incredible amount just by knowing who to follow in their blogs, because I'm active in my community, but also the videos that people put up. It's just amazing the things that I've learned. And so people ask me, how did you get started in the data industry? And that's the first thing I say is you just go look for the information. It's all there. So whatever you're wanting to learn, it's all there. Look for the community. So if you want to learn a lot about SQL, right, you look for a SQL community and see who the leaders are there, and then start reading them, start reading their blogs, start following them, start looking at their videos. and that's just a fantastic way to learn. That's the
Okay.
best way to learn for me.
Cool. Carlos, what do you think? You're muted, buddy.
Oh man.
All right.
I was all right. I was saying, people need to understand the basics of the cloud, elasticity, upscale, or the worst. This is really confusing for some people. I want to scale up, or I want to scale out, and there's a difference between those two terms. So I think if you're a DBA, an on-premise DBA, wants to get better or more valuable for your company, want to learn about Azure, I would say, or any other cloud, I would say that they need to start from the basics, so understand are those terms. I would say, also look for courses on Pluralsight. I'm not pitching anybody, but Teams course is really good at Pluralsight. And YouTube, as Angela said, I use YouTube all the time for almost anything I want to learn. So there's a lot of information there. Some are good, some are not that good, I would say. So you have to be very careful. You need to know which people you need to follow. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Dustin, you were next.
Yeah, so for me, I'll echo the community stuff as well. But a big one for me was just start a trial account and get in there and start playing with that stuff. At least for Azure, if you have a Visual Studio subscription, you've got free monthly credits that you can use. Like, get in there and just put some stuff up and break it. Like $100 credit will go a long ways in terms of just building things up and learning how to do things. There's additional training resources. Pluralsight's a great one to be able to use. It's really inexpensive to go on and watch videos and do things. And for me, my first actual Azure training event was actually with Mr. Tim Radney. It was an immersion event that he taught on Azure a few years ago. So that was kind of, I'd done some stuff with it before, but that was the first formal training that I had that was really well. And every now and then I'll still refer back to the booklet I got from there on checking something, even though some things have changed since then. But
yeah, SQL skills and those guys are amazing.
Frank, a lot has changed. Don't kid yourself. A lot has changed.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
Frank, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I think as all of you said, there are so many resources out there in the internet, and I think there have never been times where you get so easy to learning stuff, either on Pluralsight, either on LinkedIn Learning, either on Udemy, either on YouTube. What I can recommend if you want to get yourself to familiarize with Azure, the Microsoft official learning course is very good as well. And what is interesting about this is that all the exercises you can do there, you can find on GitHub. So if you're searching for AZ900 on GitHub, you will find them, and you can just, as Dustin said, if you have a trial account, you can just try things out. Can familiarize with this. And the other thing, what I really recommend is if we can meet again, then look for maybe a meetup or some community where you can meet people in person. Here in Germany, our PaaS community is offline community. Well, not right now. Now we are virtual, but otherwise we are offline community where we meet. And the interesting thing about this is you meet people which you can ask things. So if you have a problem, and there is one thing we do now or then in our community group as well. It is called Doctors In, where we don't have a topic or we don't have a speaker, where only the people are gathering and talking about problems or things they would like to know and something like this. And to attend community meetings is really good.
Cool, that works for me. Kellen, what do you think? Is there anything that hasn't been covered?
They covered a lot. It was all great.
No, I'm like kind of like thinking maybe I shouldn't ask all of you the same question.
That's all right. No, I have to admit, when I was learning, I had never been in Azure before when I started at Microsoft. I had always done, AWS, and I was part of the Oracle Cloud when I was at Oracle. And one of the things that helped me learn was to deploy within the Azure Cloud and then to reverse engineer it and look at the ARM templates. I also ended up building out my own scripts using the scripting language that I knew, which was Bash, using AZ commands, and understanding the dependencies between everything and building out a full infrastructure environment. Understanding the, VNet versus infrastructure as a service versus PaaS versus other tools that work with it, and what dependencies were involved there. That made a huge difference in understanding everything that was involved in the cloud. And that goes for no matter if PowerShell you use, Ruby, it doesn't matter what you need to know. If you figure out how to do it, then you can deploy it within Terraform and get into Ansible and PowerShell and anything that you want for your automation skills. And that really is the next step for most of us.
Excellent. Rob, your turn.
Great. So
did I just steal yours?
No.
Okay.
I was going to say, how difficult can it be now with to go near the end of this? Is brilliant. Microsoft Learning Paths, absolutely great place you can go and follow along, and lots of great examples. I've done some of those. Just trying it, absolutely. And also, I know it's a digital world we live in, but there are things called books too.
Not that many books on Azure, though. I've been asked to write them, and I refuse.
That was going to be my next point. That is literally because I'm at the end of the line. If you do go to the books on Azure or AWS or Google, you're going to find that it's going to be more tricky. Find passionate folk and ask on social media. Whichever social media you use, go and say, hey, I want to know how to, and people will answer. Passionate people will answer.
Excellent. Okay, Mindy, I'm not going to pick on you. If you have something to add, you can, but don't feel like you have to answer this.
No, I don't have a lot to add. I get asked this question a lot, especially from younger people that I come across who are trying to get into a career in the data platform arena numerous times. And I usually just start out by telling them, find if you have a local user group. If you want to be focused on Microsoft technologies, there are these user groups. Find if you have one, find when they're meeting. I point them into SQL Saturday, which a lot of them have never heard of. The Microsoft Learning is excellent, and it's probably the most kept up. You can even look at LinkedIn Learning if you want to pay. I don't know if anybody said Pluralsight, YouTube, excellent. I don't think that books, as far as this cloud stuff, can keep up anymore. They just can't keep up. I mean, it's just like the pace is too fast.
It's too hard. It is.
It was said with a smile, Mindy.
Yeah,
it's a good call, though. Tim, you get the last word.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's pretty much named everything. I mean, for me, because when I started, there was a couple of people blogging on Azure, and Grant, I mean, it was pretty much it. It's like, hey, here's another thing. Y'all should be using this. It's really cool. So when I got started, which 5 years ago, or a little over 5 years ago, it was about all we had was blogs. There weren't many YouTube videos. There was no Microsoft Learning that was decent with anything. So it was let me take my MSDN, free $150 credits, spin up an Azure SQL database and figure out what all is different. What can I do? And I started teaching. So you want to learn this stuff? Teach it. You know, show somebody else how to do something in it. But now, so I went and created Pluralsight course. I'm glad so many people mentioned Pluralsight. I'm actually, next week, I should have the final, all right, let's move ahead with a whole Azure, what do they call it? Learning path. So first course, SQL database, then managed instance, infrastructure as a service for SQL Server, sizing a workload, migrating workloads, Azure data security, and then ultimately automation. So how to do the things like check DBs, index maintenance, statistic updates. I mean, those things that you still have to do, whether it's PaaS or IaaS. So that will be just chock full of, here's all the information, here's tons of demos, how to do the things. But a lot of those things are also out on YouTube, either mine or others, or I will also be putting a lot of this out in YouTube. Just here's how to configure dynamic data masking, row level security. Those bits just in 5 to 8 minute little clips, which is that's where I go to now. Is the Google Bing? Yeah, I can do that, but shit, how old is that blog post? If I don't see a date on it, I just ignore and move on.
I just wrote an editorial on that topic today.
Right. Even if it's a Microsoft doc, I'll look to see, all right, 6 minutes to read. Oh, 2017. It's like, you got to skip it. So go to YouTube. It's like, oh, this is a 3-month-old video. All right. Maybe it's old. I mean, all the number of times I've had to refactor my IE Azure stuff. I was in the middle of the first Azure SQL or Azure Pluralsight course when the entire portal changed. So all of my videos were obsolete at that point. And I'm like, I'm not re-recording all this stuff. And just now. So is it Azure SQL? Is that the family? Or is it Azure SQL Database? Is it Azure SQL Database Managed Instance? Is it Azure SQL Managed Instance? And
Postgres and MySQL and
it's always PostgreSQL.
Postgres.
If you say Postgres, they freak out. Yeah.
Oh,
trust me, because it's always Oracle to PostgreSQL. That's the only message we have.
Oracle to PostgreSQL.
No matter what I'm doing with the other 80% of the workload, just remember that.
Well, see, last week there was like a whole kind of reswizzle, new pages launched, and it's Azure SQL Database, Managed Instance, Hyperscale, Serverless. And now they're even trying to say it's Azure SQL Infrastructure as a Service. I mean, SQL Server on an Azure VM is Azure SQL VM. I mean, they're trying to even throw that in there in the whole PaaS. I'm like, no, stop.
All right, we are just shy of out of time, so I don't mean to interrupt. But does anyone have something they would like to talk about next week? And then we'll get that into the promotion.
How to scale IaaS.
I was going to say storage performance, and I'm right there with it. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's someplace that I live and breathe right now.
Excellent. I don't even know what questions to ask on that stuff. So I
just let you list. Give Kelly an hour.
So there never were any questions coming in, although we had viewers the entire time. So thank you guys all so much for doing it. Again, no pressure. If you show up next week, great. If you don't, great. I love you either way. Thanks for your time, and we'll reset everything up, and there'll be a new launch Monday or Tuesday for next Friday. Thanks a lot. You guys have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.
Bye, friends.
Bye.
Yeah.
See ya. Let's see. I'm going to end the stream first.